Welcome to this presentation, which shall introduce you into the phases of the creative process. This presentation is part of the Taikon Learning environment and part of Unit 1. This is how the agenda looks. So first I will introduce you into the big phases of creative processes, divergent and convergent thinking phases. Then I will give you examples of divergent and convergent thinking. And thereafter we will dive deep into the subphases of creativity processes. In between and at the end, we will always do a little exercise that gives you time to reflect and to recap what you have learned in this unit. Now let's start with the big phases of creative processes. The big phases are phases of convergent and divergent thinking. So creative processes consist of both of these phases, and they are both very important. In the divergent phase, the goal is to create as many ideas as possible, to create choice, because otherwise there would be nothing to make choice from in the convergent phase. So the convergent phase is designed to limit the number of ideas again. So to sum up, the goal of divergent thinking: generate as many different ideas as possible in a short period of time. And convergent thinking: combine and evaluate the ideas and the information that you have generated. In this table, you can see some examples of convergent and divergent thinking. They are from a very important paper, a paper by Cropley, 2006. And these processes that you can see represent typical processes of convergent and divergent thinking. Now let's start with the convergent thinking. If you think in a convergent manner, then typically you focus on recognizing things that are similar, or combining things that belong together, or preserving what you already know, playing it safe, or making associations from fields that are close to what you're discussing. And through this, you will feel that you become more familiar with what already exists, that you know more, that you are able to give a correct answer, that you have in-depth knowledge or a high level of skill, and you will feel secure and safe. If you instead go into divergent thinking, that means the first phase of creativity processes, then it's rather about being unconventional, seeing things in a new light, producing multiple answers, shifting perspectives, seeing new possibilities, but also taking risks. And it is risky to propose an idea that nobody has thought about yet, because the others might say, "Are you crazy?" That's what might happen. You're taking risks when you're in the divergent phase, and that might result for you as an individual also, but also as a group, in multiple so far unthought ideas, which is good, because then you can choose from surprising answers in new lines of thinking or new ways of doing things, and from exciting possibilities. At the same time, you will probably feel a bit uncertain. Now it's time to reflect. I would like you to take a piece of paper and a pen. And then I would like you to imagine that you would be given the task to suggest a means to support an old lady with transporting food from the supermarket to her home. Come up with 3 solutions that result from convergent thinking, and come up with 5 solutions that result from divergent thinking. And then justify how did your thinking differ. What I would like you to do now, that you have your piece of paper, you have your task, and you have your pen. that you pause this presentation for 5 minutes and try to write down what you think. Try to come up with solutions and try to understand how did your thinking differ. After 5 minutes, you turn this presentation on again. Good luck. Now, what did you come up with? Like 3 convergent thinking solutions. Did you say, well, I would just go there and help her? Or I would drive by with my car and put her food into my car and then it will come there. Or you might say, that's maybe a bit more crazy. I send her a taxi and the taxi will transport the lady and the food to her house. That's kind of solutions from convergent thinking. But what were your solutions that resulted from divergent thinking? I have done these exercises in classes and the students came up with a lot of funny ideas. I think the one that I felt is the most creative was to actually send the food with the local post. So like PostNord in Denmark, relatively slow, but for sure an option if you want to get your food from the supermarket to your house. There were other solutions. They invented, for example, new measures or means for transportation. They put the food and the lady on a rocket. Very interesting things that came up, and they of course differed, because on those from divergent thinking, people would probably have said, yeah, maybe not a good idea, or I don't know whether this is technically feasible or whether that is within the ethical rules of society. But yeah, so that's the difference between convergent and divergent thinking. Now let's go to the phases of the creative process. Creative processes, other than said in most books about creativity, have more than 2 phases. They start or shall start with an uploading phase. Then the divergent phase has 2 subphases. The first one is called inspiration. The second one is called association. Then comes a turning point, which also needs to be facilitated so that the students or the participants in general of creative workshops can free their minds and get attuned to now converging in their thinking. That means getting first into a phase where they combine ideas, and then into a phase where they select and assess ideas. And then the end of every creativity process should of course also have a reflection of the process. Now just seeing that there is 7 different subphases of creativity processes of course also highlights that you cannot just use one method and one method will serve all these sub-processes. Methods shall be selected according to the phases or to the sub-phases of the creativity process, and that is one of the challenges that you as a teacher then need to take care of. Let's have a look into the individual sub-phases. So there's the uploading phase. The uploading phase at the beginning is very important because usually people come to a workshop with knowledge that they already have. And it's important to give them the opportunity to write down what do they already know to show how clever they are. Earlier experience that they have in the topic area, very important to kind of showcase they are the right people in this group to the others in the group, and then also to write down existing ideas that they came with. Because if you invite people to a creativity process, they will already have ideas. And if you don't give them the opportunity to write them down in the beginning, then they will probably take them through the process, and in the end you will just get the same thing that people thought about already in the beginning, because they couldn't clear their heads. So what you should do is you should use methods that allow people to write down what they know, to present themselves, and also the ideas that they already have. And then keep these things visible in the room so that people can always go back to their initial ideas and don't have to be scared and don't have to think about them further. The first subphase of the inspiration phase, of the divergent thinking phase, is the inspiration phase. And here it's important that you use methods that let participants act based on intuition. So they should get stimulated and attuned to creativity. There should be a friendly, playful, and open atmosphere created through this. And usually these are methods that provoke a high-speed flow of statements and ideas. So don't allow people to think in this phase, because if they think, if they rationalize, then they do not act based on intuition. But what you want to do is to open their mind and to not allow them to think. So use methods like the catchword method, for example, that provoke this flow writing or flow speaking or flow drawing. Whatever you find that makes people act on intuition is good in this phase. Divergent thinking has a second phase, the association phase. In the association phase, people create first ideas that are not only based on intuition, but they should be based on cognitive association. That means it's not about rationalizing, it's not about selecting, it's not about criticizing there. But there can be sense making as part of it. So it's not just intuition and writing down everything you know. It's more about drawing the big picture and developing first ideas, which should still be based on the aim to generate as many ideas as possible. The turning point creates the awareness that from now on something new starts, so the future activities will close what was opened and the participants must reduce the amount of ideas. Usually, two types of exercises are well suited for this phase. Exercises that ask from the participants a high level of energy, or exercises that make them deeply relax, like relax exercises. Convergent thinking starts with a combination phase. So all the many ideas that have been created in the first phase should now be reduced. And reducing works best with combining ideas, linking them and developing them into concrete applications and solutions, for example with the flower method. And then it's time to assess the ideas and to select the best one, and also for those you have specific methods that you can use, and they are different, right? So you can make dotmography, you can have different charts where you have assessment criteria according to which ideas are selected and so on. That's again another phase that requires other methods. And Then the reflection phase is to reflect about the findings from the workshop, defining follow-up measures, but also thinking about how was this process? How was this process in that we have developed our methods, and how could we maybe next time improve this process? So now it's again time to reflect. What I would like you to do is, from the creativity methods that you know, try to identify one facilitation method that you would use in each of the subphases. So which method would you use for uploading? Which method would you use for inspiration? Which one for association? Which for the turning point? Which for combination? Which for assessment? And which for reflection? I'm sure that you have ideas and that you know methods that might be good for the different phases. Just take a pen and a piece of paper and write them down. Pause this presentation and turn it on again in 5 minutes. How did it go? I hope you have now something written next to each of the phases. If not, then have a look into the Tycoon method collection. There you will find a lot of inspiration for each of the methods. But probably you didn't even have a problem. Still then, I would recommend you to go into the Tycoon method collection and look at whether you could gain more inspiration, and particularly whether you could gain inspiration for how to implement these methods online. So now congratulations, you're done with this part of Unit 1. This presentation is part of the learning content in Unit 1 of the Tycoon platform. The author of these slides and the speaker of the voiceover was Patricia Wolf from the University of Southern Denmark.